To bring balance to the housing market, we are formalizing the rental sector, establishing a clear, accountable system which protects both landlords and tenants and strengthens the integrity of the property market. Let me speak to you a bit about that measure, because some people are already misleading you and spinning it and contorting, if that's the word. That landlord business surcharge is not a property tax.
Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar is absolutely right. What she is proposing in this year's budget, called the Landlord Business Surcharge, is not a property tax. In this video, I am going to tell you that this landlord tax is actually a tenant tax, and it's far, far worse than the property tax that was proposed under the previous government. Let's get into it. Hi folks, welcome back to the third Bara, where we talk about investing in the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange and basically all topics dealing with your finances. It has been a while. I think my last post was maybe more than 3 months ago. But have no fear, I am still around. I am still doing my thing in the background. I am not going to close the channel. Just, life happens. And the thing about it, and what you all will learn along with me, even though things in your life will distract you, your portfolio keeps on doing its thing. I kept on getting my dividends. I kept on investing. And actually, I made a lot of changes. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of changes. I made some changes to my portfolio. I had a rethink of my overall philosophy, and I decided to cut the dead weight and double down on certain parts of my portfolio. But, maybe I'll give you guys a quick peek. Yeah, I think you can see there. And let me see. Let me see if I can give you a quick peek. Yeah, so I'm going to give you a quick peek of my portfolio, but that's not the topic of discussion for today. Today, we are going to talk about the budget and why I was brought back from my hibernation. I was in the comments. Every now and then, people pose questions. I responded, but I wasn't posting any videos. And during the time I was out, I got a lot of new subscribers. So if you're new, if you've just joined the channel after my last post, let me see, when was my last post? Let me see. This is the studio. If you all have a YouTube channel, this will be familiar to you. Let me see my content. My last post was on the 28th of June. So it's been a while. It has been a while. But have no fear. I am back. And I want to talk about one particular thing in this year's budget. It got a little spotlight. People started to talk about it, but then, as per normal, with anything in politics in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a 2-second attention span and we move on to something else. But this channel isn't about politics. We talk about the money here. And I want to talk about this tax, the landlord tax. Because if you didn't know, my early subscribers would know, and I made a post about it. I am a landlord, and I guess I am one of those that Kamala was targeting, meaning that I don't live in Trinidad. However, I have property in Trinidad, and I guess I am doing this big, bad, evil thing. I am renting out my property getting an income, and oh, I am not paying tax. Don't worry, we'll dive down into it to another level, because apparently we are all big, bad, greedy landlords. Are we? Well, let's see. However, once again, if you're new to my channel, welcome. This post isn't following my normal format. I typically talk about my portfolio at first and then I get into whatever the topic is. But I don't want this video to be too long. I didn't mean to come back posting regularly now, but as I said, this landlord tax brought me out and I had to get my 2 cents in. Because if you guys have been with me for a while, you would know I spoke about the business side of renting and investing in real estate. I am so glad I did. Yeah, so if you go to my channel page, you would see that on my third to last post about 4 months ago, I spoke about investing in Trinidad real estate and why it is not the infinity gauntlet of wealth creation. In Trinidad, we have many mom and pop retirees who own their original home and they are renting it out. They probably moved into another smaller home and they decide to supplement their pension if they have one, supplement their retirement income with additional income from rentals. This is most of the landlords in Trinidad. Yes, we have some big players who own a lot of property. They own these real estate development. And yes, they also do commercial rentals of commercial space, leasing of commercial space as well. But a lot of us, even people who are working right now, who are in their 40s, who are in their 50s, all of us are thinking, you know what? I am getting long in the tooth. I am going to retire soon. I need some source of income post my retirement. And renting is the number one thing that people in Trinidad and Tobago does. Renting real estate, residential property. The thing is, not too long ago, in Trinidad and Tobago, we had a whole political party whose center core value was axing the tax. They went to every length and breadth of Trinidad talking about the property tax is evil and you should axe the tax. And as I said in my intro, Kamala Prasad Bisesa is right. What she's proposing is not a property tax. So people who own their homes, who are not getting an income by renting or leasing their homes, they are immune to this tax. They would not be affected. Those that will be affected are those evil landlords like myself who are earning an income from renting my real estate. And as she says, we should be paying her our fair share of tax. That is what she said. In fact, let me not paraphrase. Let me play the entire thing of what she said in the press conference.
To bring balance to the housing market, we are formalizing the rental sector, establishing a clear, accountable system which protects both landlords and tenants and strengthens the integrity of the property market. Let me speak to you a bit about that measure, because some people are already misleading you and spinning it and contorting, if that's the word. That landlord business surcharge is not a property tax. Let's get that very, very clear. It is not a revised version of property tax. This is where we are putting a surcharge on people who are making income, earning income from their properties. So, for example, it's not on residential properties, understand? But if you take your property and you're renting it, but then you're breaking the law by not paying taxes, because that is income. It's a commercial enterprise. You're making income, and by law, you should be paying taxes. But if we're too long in the system, these persons were allowed to get away with it. You know, some of them don't even live in Trinidad, but they own 5 houses in Trinidad or in Tobago, and they're renting it out, collecting income, but paying no taxes. So everybody there must be a sharing of the burdens as well as the wealth of the country. And this is one way they will contribute to our coffers with the revenue. And at the same time, we can account. This is the accountability measure. So if you have any questions about that, I will be free to go further into it. But I make it very clear, it is not a property tax. The property tax was based on a ghost ARV, annual rateable rental value. Ghost, that was a ghost, just like the ghost in the CPEP and the URP. That was a ghost rental. Now, where the real rentals, it's a real rental because you'll actually be collecting the rent as an income. So you'll pay your share towards the nation's treasury. I want to say also, I said it before, let me repeat, I want to make it very clear, this is not on people's homes. It is not on people's homes. So don't get tied up with those who want to take us down the garden path and lose us down there on the beach. Don't get tied up with that narrative. It is not a property tax. It is a tax on persons using their buildings to earn income, okay? And that income will now be taxed.
So you guys heard her. That was our Prime Minister. And she said that this landlord tax is about accountability. We are no longer allowed to circumvent the system. We are gaining an income. This is a commercial enterprise, as they say. So we should be paying our fair share of tax. No problem with that, Kamala. Oh, sorry, Miss Bisessa. No problem with that, Madam Prime Minister. I have no problem with paying my fair share of tax. And let's actually see what that tax is. So I will refer to what is actually written in the budget proposal. Let's dive deeper. Written in the budget, there is a line item, or I should say a section on page 176 entitled Landlord Business Surcharge. And it goes like this. In recent times, there has been an explosion of unregistered commercial and residential rental properties. Many of these landlords have been avoiding paying their fair share of tax. This contributes to significant revenue loss and a lack of reliable data to support policy development. The introduction of this landlord business surcharge based on actual rental income will broaden the tax revenue base, promoting fairness, transparency, and accountability. This measure requires all landlords to register with the Board of Inland Revenue and pay a one-time registration fee of $2,500. The surcharge will be applied as follows: 2.5% of the gross annual rental income of $20,000 or less, and 3.5% of the gross annual rental income exceeding $20,000. So, if your gross annual rental income, basically your monthly rent multiplied by 12, is $20,000 or less, you get taxed 2.5% of that. If it's more than 20,000, you get taxed 3.5%. This measure takes effect on January 1st, 2026, next year, and is expected to yield a minimum of 70 million from the one-time registration fee alone. And of course, our government will spend that additional 70 million wisely. It will absolutely help every citizen in this country. So, folks, that's basically what the noise is about. We are getting an additional tax. So let's have a look at the finances of these evil landlords like myself that our prime minister is referring to, who lack accountability and don't pay our fair share. So remember in my real estate video, I use an example from, I think, West Hills apartment. And I referred to an online calculator, and you can do it yourself from calculator.net. And I'm showing you the different costs associated with renting a property. So, of course, you have your purchase price, that's self explanatory. If you're taking a loan, you'll have a down payment, you have an interest rate. The term of the loan is typically 30 years, and you have your closing costs. And this closing cost, I mean, when you purchase a property, you pay VAT. VAT goes to the government. You know, you're dealing with the lawyers, you have to pay your lawyers. If you have any renovations to do to the property, you have to pay all these local service providers, the plumbers, the carpenters, the cleaners, etc. I mean, this is all part of us reinvesting back into the local economy, unlike what Kamala says. And of course, in the reoccurring expenses column, we have property tax. Mark my words, folks. This government might have its opinion about property tax, but property tax is coming. Eventually, PNM will be voted back into power, and they're going to implement the property tax. What this government is currently doing is not only is they we are speaking about property tax, but they have now introduced a new tax that we weren't exposed to before. Now they claim it was already on the books, it was part of the law. We were circumventing the law. Okay, but the fact remains we weren't paying this landlord tax before, and now you're imposing that on us going forward. Once a government does that, there is no taking it away. We're going to be paying this additional income tax from now till. But I digress. So we have our property tax, which will come. We have your insurance, which you have to pay insurance annually for your property. Your HOA fee, well, my property is being managed by homeowners association, where they maintain the facilities, they maintain the pool, the gym, all the other additional facilities around my apartment. So I pay a monthly fee. Maintenance. When you're renting a property, you have to make sure that property is in tip-top shape, else no one will want to rent it. So whereas if you have a house, you have a leaky tap, you can live with it because it's yours, right? In a rental property, you have to fix it because that's the first thing tenants will identify. They'll be calling up your phone. Hey, your tap, you have a leaky faucet, you need it fixed. So once again, the maintenance guys, they're not coming out of thin air. They're coming from the local pool of plumbers, of servicemen, and we have to pay them. So this idea that we are greedy landlords living abroad and we are just sucking the system with our rental income and pulling the money abroad. I don't know how we're doing that, by the way, because you can't get USD, so the money can't leave Trinidad anyway. But we reinvest that money back into the local market, either directly through servicemen or we are paying annual fees, insurance. When you have a property, there is operational expenses you can't avoid. However, in my video, when I was doing the calculations, this column, other costs, was zero. Now, with this landlord tax, I now have to put a figure here. And in my case, where I rent my apartment for 7,500, let me just do a quick calculation. That would mean that my income, yearly annual gross income, is 90,000. So I'll be paying at the higher tax bracket, the 3.5%. And that means that my yearly tax is now $3,150. My yearly tax due to this additional tax that was proposed by this government is now going to be 3,150. Keep that in mind, because I did pay my property tax, and the property tax that I had to pay for this very same property was $900. Let me repeat that. The property tax that everyone was angry about, even the current prime minister, when she was opposition leader, when she stood as opposition leader, she said, axe the wicked tax. I fully agree, because I'm against paying any taxes to government, because our government does not utilize our tax money wisely anyway. So why am I paying it? However, when our present prime minister was in opposition, she said, axe the wicked tax, because it was wicked. That wicked tax cost me $900. However, her new landlord tax, as she called it, is now costing me $3,150. So, if I was against the property tax, how do you think I feel about this new landlord surcharge tax? They are now trying to focus on a certain subsection of the population who they seem to want to demonize as our evil landlords. And they're saying, oh, you're earning extra income, so you have to pay your fair share of tax. As if lawyers in Trinidad and Tobago pay their fair share of tax. The last time I used a lawyer, I paid cash. Why do we have to pay cash? Because they are able to go around the system and not declare to Board of Inland Revenue. Yeah, that's why we have doctors taking cash. Lawyers take cash. In fact, everyone takes cash. Because when you take cash, you can submit whatever your income is to the Board of Inland Revenue and pay a lesser tax rate to the government. Everyone in Trinidad is doing that. But apparently, the landlord is the biggest culprit of them all, according to our present Prime Minister. So we must be held accountable. We must pay. Fine, no problem. But there is a big but here. So the big caveat to this is, no problem. She's our prime minister. This is a government. Whatever tax they want to impose on me, I will have to pay. But who is really going to pay this tax? Because I'm telling you, once I register my property as a commercial enterprise, as they say, I am going to pass this cost down to my tenant. And I've already calculated this. So pre-budget, my monthly rental was 7,500. Now that I have to pay 3,150 in tax, I have ran the numbers and I need to increase my monthly rent to 7,772. So you know what? I'm going to round it up. I'm going to round it off to $7,800. So my monthly rent is going to increase by $300 to $7,800 per month. And I'm going to tell my tenants that this is because of the new budget requirement. because as a landlord, my profit margins are already slim. Investing in real estate, the real estate business is about slim margins. We don't get these Robert Kiyosaki numbers here in Trinidad. Mom and pop landlords, like most of us, they have slim margins if they're making any money at all because real estate prices are so high. It is cost someone far less to rent a property than to buy that particular property. I don't think everyone understands it. When you take a mortgage to get a particular property, you're paying minimum between 6 and 7% to the banks. That's 6 and 7% additional you're gonna have to pay over the course of 30-year mortgage. It is going to cost you more than if you had to rent that exact same property. The rental prices in Trinidad does not cover the mortgage and everything else. It doesn't. That happens in the US maybe, but not in Trinidad. If you want to make money from purchasing a piece of real estate, you have to buy it fully, cash. You cannot be paying the bank mortgage and think you can rent that property and your tenant will help you pay the mortgage. It doesn't work like that. The numbers doesn't lie. And in my last video, 4 months ago, I explained all this. So, any additional tax that is imposed on me as a landlord, I am going to pass it down to my tenant. That is why this landlord surcharge tax is actually an undercover tenant tax. And how many people in Trinidad and Tobago are renting? I tried. There are no statistics. This is the kind of data that the Central Statistical Office is supposed to have. What percentage of the working population of Trinidad and Tobago rents? And anecdotally, I can tell you it's a lot. When I graduated from college and I got my job, I had to move out because my job wasn't really close to my home. And guess what? I had to rent. And where I was renting, I was surrounded by other people who were renting. There were families renting, there were single people renting, there were couples renting. Everyone rents. Around UE, everyone rents. So, does this government naively think that landlords are going to take this tax and be out of pocket? No, this is going directly straight to the tenant. Just as I calculated how much I needed to increase my tax next year to cover this additional landlord surcharge tax, other landlords are doing the same. So the net benefit to the, or I should say, the net effect to this measure in the budget is an overall increase in rental fees across the board. People are going to be impacted directly into their pockets. And you can say, well, that's those who are paying rent. Those who own their own homes, they would be unaffected. Is that so? Because it's going to apply to residential property and commercial property. And I don't have to tell you guys, businessmen in Trinidad, once the government imposes a tax, it goes straight to the consumer. So your corner shop who's paying rent, they're going to mix that additional rental charge and filter it down to the customers. So this is how it will go. The person who owns the rental property will charge additional rental fees to the tenant. And the tenant, whether it's a bakery or small clothes shop, is going to now run the numbers and mark up all their prices now to cover this additional tax, these additional expenses that they have to pay. And then you, as a consumer, will be walking into those shops to buy goods and services. And guess what? It's going to be incrementally higher so that you will end up paying for that additional tax. So whether it is the residential property or whether it is the commercial property, everybody will feel it. Make no mistake. This isn't going to the evil landlords. My margins are going to remain the same. And then you might say, well, if I raise my rental property, my rental fee, then my tenants will move out. So be it. That's how business runs. I have a vacancy cost. Let me tell you, as a landlord, it is better to keep my property vacant than renting out my property at a margin that is making me go out of pocket. It doesn't make sense because I have to pay maintenance fees when someone is in my property because there's wear and tear. And if I'm not getting the margins I want, it does not make sense. It's better my property is left empty. So there will be more demand for whatever cheaper properties there are. But my apartment is in a high demand area. So if my tenant gets upset and leaves, no problem. Within a month, I'm going to get another tenant willing to pay the higher fee. That is how capitalism works. There will be someone that will see value in your property and they will rent it out. This is not a cup of coffee. This is not uh, a consumer product in a grocery where you will say, no, I won't pay for the premium one. I'll pay for the less expensive one. This is your home. And my home is a very safe private security area. Someone will see value in it. So I'm telling you, me and other landlords would not be impacted by this. Who is going to pay? It's the tenant. And if the tenant is, if it's a commercial property, and the tenant is actually a store, the store is going to pass those costs to the customers. Everybody will feel it. So, for those who clapped a round of applause to the Prime Minister for this additional tax, brace, brace, brace. Because next year, you'll be paying that tax. This is a tenant tax. Case closed. So, folks, I hope you understand now why I say this is a tenant tax and everybody's going to feel it next year. If you're new to my channel and you did not quite understand how I broke down the different costs, I encourage you, please go to my channel and look at this video right here. I am circling on the screen right now with Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. Have a look at that video and then you'll understand. Investing real estate in Trinidad is small margins. So any additional fees as a landlord, you have no choice. You have to pass it down to the tenant. That's just how the nature of the business. If I was not making a profit from renting my property, I might as well sell my property because it doesn't make sense. The hassle is not worth it. So if you were new to my channel, I hope you enjoyed this post. I know I have about 20 previous posts on my channel. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any comments, particularly on this landlord tax, aka tenant tax, please let me know in the comments. I will be in the comments. In fact, if you have any questions on any of my previous videos, let me know in the comments. I am in the comments almost every day. I will reply to your comment. I haven't had much time to post lately. I just got the 2 hours now, so I haven't to scramble together this video because, man, this was weighing on my chest and I needed to let this out in the internet because people have moved on to Trinidad versus US versus Venezuela nonsense. Keep your eyes on the money. This landlord surcharge tax are going to raise everything across the board because a lot of people are renters in terms of their residential property, and a lot of businesses are renting in terms of commercial properties. So, if the landlords of all these commercial properties and all these residential properties pass the additional tax down to their tenant, we are going to all feel it. If you disagree with me, let me know why in the comments. Take care.